Marcus's idea to venture deep into Blackwood Gorge was born of pure recklessness. Marcus was the kind of guy whose confidence bordered on madness. He was obsessed with wilderness survival, spent hours on prepper forums, and insisted that the dense woods at the state border were the perfect place to reboot their brains after graduation exams. There were 7 of them, 7 loyal friends who had known each other since elementary school. Marcus was the informal leader, tough, well-read, but overly self-assured. Chloe was his girlfriend, quiet, sensible, and carrying a massive first aid kit. Chris was the joker and the life of the party, never parting with his portable speaker and an old camcorder. Sadie was Chloe's best friend, a fragile, easily frightened girl who had only agreed to the trip for Chris's sake. Derek was a reserved, burly guy, a jack-of-all-trades who carried the heaviest backpack loaded with an axe and cooking pots. Ryan was the programmer and the skeptic, always grumbling, checking the GPS, and wishing he had stayed home with his computer. And Haley was the youngest of the group, a hyperactive vlogger girl, dreaming of capturing epic footage for her social media. The long-distance bus dropped them off near an abandoned gas station around 5 in the evening. The driver, a grim old man, glanced at their massive backpacks and merely spat through his teeth. "There's no cell service out there. If you make it back, make sure to stop by a church." Teenagers just laughed at the old man's superstition. The trek deep into the woods took much longer than Marcus had anticipated. The trail marked on Ryan's old maps was overgrown with thorny bushes and wild ferns. The trees grew taller, their canopies weaving together overhead, turning the pre-sunset light into a thick, murky twilight. The air here felt stagnant, smelling of rotting wood, old leaves, and something sickeningly sweet. "Marcus, can we set up camp?" Sadie asked, breathing heavily. "My legs can't take it anymore." "Just another half hour," Marcus replied from the front. "There's an old loggers clearing ahead on the map. The ground is flat there, not like this marsh. We need a proper place to sleep." They reached the clearing just as the sun completely dipped below the horizon. It was a strange place, a perfect, almost unnatural circle among ancient pines, where nothing grew except sparse gray grass. The stumps of trees cut down long ago looked charred, as if from a fire, though there were no traces of old campfires around. As the guys pitched 3 tents and gathered firewood, darkness fell instantly, as if a heavy black blanket had been thrown over the forest. Ryan's digital watch beeped softly, announcing midnight. From that moment on, time seemed to slow down. They sat by the campfire. The fire crackled cheerfully, consuming dry pine branches, but its light inexplicably failed to penetrate far. It carved only the teenagers' faces and the first 2 yards of the forest out of the darkness. Beyond that lay an absolute, palpable blackness. If you stretched out your hand, your fingers seemed to disappear into it. Chris fiddled with his camera, filming his friends' faces. "So, fellow survivors, it's 00:50. We're in the middle of nowhere," he said into the lens in a mock graveyard voice. "If they find us by this recording, know this. Derek ate our rations without permission." "Shut up, Chris," Derek grunted without real malice, tossing a branch into the fire. "We need to save the firewood. The forest is weird. Have you noticed? Not a single bird can be heard. Even the cicadas aren't chirping." Indeed, the silence was deafening. There wasn't even a breeze. Not a leaf stirred. The forest seemed frozen in anticipation of something, holding its breath. Haley, sitting on a log slightly apart from the others, was adjusting a ring light on a tripod, trying to catch at least some cell signal on her phone. "Hey guys, is anyone getting a signal?" she asked. "I don't even have emergency calls." "Forget it, Hales," Ryan replied, staring at his GPS screen. "It barely sees satellites out here. Total dead zone." Haley sighed and stood up. "I'm stepping away for a couple of minutes, to the restroom. No peeking, okay?" "Don't go too far," Marcus called after her. "Stay near the bushes at the edge of the clearing so we can see the fire." Haley turned on her phone's flashlight. A thin beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the rough bark of a massive spruce about 30 paces from the camp. She took a few steps, and her shoes sank softly into the wet moss. The warmth of the campfire remained a glowing dot behind her. She walked behind the thick trunk of a tree. The noises of the camp, Chris's muffled laughter, Ryan's murmuring, suddenly became dull, as if coming from underwater. Haley turned off her phone screen to save battery, and at that very moment a strange sound broke the silence. Snap, like someone stepping on a dry branch, right behind her back. "Guys, Chris, if this is you, it's not funny at all, I'm gonna scream." She shouted, but her voice sounded surprisingly quiet, as if the surrounding moss absorbed all the sound. In response, a whisper echoed. It wasn't a human voice. The sound resembled the rustle of dry leaves rubbing against each other in the wind, but within that rustle, her name was clearly decipherable: Haley. She froze, paralyzed by a sudden slimy terror. Her fingers went numb. She tried to turn on her phone, but the screen remained black. The battery, which had shown 80% just 5 minutes ago, was completely drained. From the darkness, right in front of her, about 10 feet off the ground, came a soft, hissing exhale. Out of the inky void stretched something long, thin, and pale, resembling a dry, skinless branch with multiple joints. It descended silently onto her shoulder. Haley opened her mouth to scream, but the cry caught in her throat. The dry, icy appendages instantly wrapped around her neck, cutting off her air. With incredible speed, without a single rustle of grass, the girl was dragged backward into the impenetrable thicket. A single sneaker slipped off her foot, left lying in the moss. About 15 minutes passed by the fire. "Haley's been gone a long time," Chloe said anxiously, looking toward the dark trees. "I'll go check on her." "Come on, maybe she's just trying to catch a signal higher up," Chris dismissed, though he turned off his camera. A strange unease began to sprout inside everyone. The atmosphere in the clearing had changed. It had grown noticeably colder. Faint breath fogged from their mouths. "Derek, go with Chloe," Marcus commanded, standing up. "Take the heavy flashlight." Derek took the heavy search flashlight, and he and Chloe headed toward the edge of the clearing. The powerful beam pierced the darkness, revealing the old pine trees. "Haley," Chloe called out. "Wrap it up, it's getting freezing." There was no answer. They walked a bit further to where the girl had vanished behind the tree. The beam of Derek's flashlight swept across the grass and stopped. "Chloe, look at this," the guy said quietly. On the moss lay Haley's white sneaker with its glowing laces. Nearby in the dirt lay her phone with a shattered screen. But the most terrifying thing was the grass around it. It wasn't just trampled. The moss had been torn away in long strips, as if someone had dragged a heavy body at immense speed, and this someone was heading deep into the woods where the trees grew so densely they resembled a palisade. "Marcus, Chris, over here, quick!" Chloe screamed hysterically. A minute later, the whole group was standing by the tree. Marcus grimly inspected the deep furrows in the ground. "A bear?" Ryan asked, hope in his voice, though he knew how stupid it sounded. "Bears don't snatch people silently." "No," Derek picked up Haley's phone. "No paw prints. The ground is just sliced up, like by claws or sharp sticks." Sadie began to cry softly, clinging to Chris. "We need to leave, right now. Let's go back to the gas station." At 1 in the morning, through a pathless thicket and deadwood, Marcus tried to regain control of the situation, though his hands were visibly shaking. "We'll get lost and break our legs in the first 100 yards. Someone is out in these woods. Fire is our protection. Wild animals are afraid of fire. Derek, Chris, gather any large logs you can find nearby. Let's build a massive fire. Girls, stay in the center of the camp." Panic is a poor advisor. Instead of sticking together, they began to scramble. Derek, feeling like the strongest, volunteered to bring a dead tree they had seen near the entrance of the clearing, literally 10 yards from the camp. "I'll be quick," he said, gripping his axe. "Ryan, give me some light." Ryan stood at the edge of the clearing, aiming the flashlight beam at Derek. He approached the fallen pine and swung the axe. A dull thud of metal hitting dry wood echoed out. At that exact moment, it seemed to Chris that out of the darkness above Derek's head, right from the branches of a healthy, living spruce, something long and dark was lowering down. "Derek, get back." Ryan yelled, but it was too late. The flashlight in Ryan's hand suddenly flickered and went out. In that same second, a brief, wet crunch echoed, like someone squeezing a ripe watermelon. The axe fell onto the stones with a metallic clang. When Ryan frantically slapped the flashlight and the light turned back on, Derek was gone from the pine tree. On the log remained only a deep gash from the axe and a thick, almost black puddle of blood, slowly absorbing into the dry bark. No scream, no sound of a struggle. A huge, muscular guy had been swept up into the tree canopies in a split second. Now there were 5 of them left. Panic escalated into a primal, animalistic dread. They crammed into the largest tent, zipping up every flap, as if a thin layer of nylon could protect them from whatever dwelt outside. Marcus sat gripping a kitchen knife, his eyes darting across the corners of the tent. Chris kept a tight hold on his camera, though the screen was off. He intended to use its powerful flash as a potential weapon, hoping to blind an attacker. Chloe prayed in a whisper, covering her face with her hands. Ryan frantically tried to revive the GPS, but the device's screen only covered itself in white bars of static interference. "It's not a man," Ryan whispered, his teeth chattering against each other. "A man can't lift Derek into a tree without a sound. It's something else. It jams electronics. Did you see how the flashlights died? It's an electromagnetic pulse or God knows what." "Shut up, Ryan, shut up." Sadie screamed, breaking into hysteria. "It's coming for us. It's going to eat us all." Outside, right above the tent, a heavy rustling sound echoed. It felt as if something massive was crawling through the tree branches, dragging dry twigs along. The tent fabric overhead sagged slightly, as if a heavy, soft paw had rested upon it. The teenagers froze, terrified to even breathe. Suddenly from above, through the thick canvas, Derek's voice called out. It sounded bizarre, flat, monotonous, devoid of any emotion, like a recording played on an old tape recorder. "Guys, help me, I'm here. It's dark here, come out." Sadie snapped her head up, her eyes widening. "It's Derek, he's alive, he's up there." She bolted toward the tent exit. "No, Sadie, wait." Chris tried to grab her jacket, but the girl, driven mad by fear and hope, tore the zipper down and burst outside. The campfire had nearly burned out by then, leaving only glowing crimson embers casting long, grotesque shadows against the tent walls. "Derek!" Sadie shouted, tilting her head back toward the dark canopies of the pines. Chris peered out after her, raising his camera. He pressed the forced flash button. A bright white light illuminated the space above the clearing for a fraction of a second. What they saw made their hearts stop. On a thick bough, at a height of 15 feet, sat a creature. It had no human face, only a pale, elongated snout like that of a dead horse, entirely devoid of eyes and skin. Instead of a mouth, a vertical slit yawned, bristling with thin, needle-like teeth. The creature's body was incredibly long, skeletal, covered in pitch-black fur or growths. But the most horrifying thing was what it held in its upper, jointed limbs. It was Derek's body. The monster pressed it close, and when it spoke, its own jaw didn't move. The sound emanated from deep within its bloated belly, hideously mimicking their dead friend's voice. The monster reacted to the flash. It emitted a piercing, ultrasonic shriek that made blood leak from the teenager's ears. Sadie fell to her knees, covering her ears with her hands. From the darkness behind her, right out of the ground, a second appendage of the beast extended, a long, bony tail with a sharp tip. It pierced the girl's jacket near her shoulder blades with a sickening squelch. Sadie didn't even have time to scream. The beast whipped her upward instantly, concealing her in the black foliage of the trees. From above came the crunch of breaking bones and wet chewing sounds. Chris was thrown back into the tent by the explosive wave of his own terror. He was breathing heavily, his face pale as chalk, and his hands shook so violently he nearly dropped the camera. Inside the tent remained Marcus, Chloe, and Ryan. "Did you see it? Who's out there?" Marcus grabbed Chris by the shoulder, shaking him. It's not an animal," Chris wheezed, gasping for air. "It has no eyes, it's massive. It's eating them up there in the trees. and it talks with their voices. It's luring us. Ryan, who had been sitting in the corner, suddenly stood up. His gaze was entirely vacant. "It's useless," he said quietly. "We are in its territory. It's a spider or a bird. We are just worms in a jar to it." "Ryan, pull yourself together." Marcus slapped his cheek, but Ryan didn't even react. Suddenly the tent shuddered. A powerful blow from above tore the nylon roof completely in half. Freezing night air rushed into the rift along with falling debris. "Run!" Marcus yelled, grabbing Chloe by the hand. They bolted from the ruined tent. The campfire was completely dead. The only source of light was the pale disk of the moon, occasionally peeking through the clouds. The teenagers scattered. Marcus and Chloe ran toward the presumed trail, while Chris, tripping over a root, fell, rolled through the grass, and went still behind a fallen log. He lay on his stomach, pressing into the damp earth, and through a narrow gap beneath the log, he could see the entire clearing. Ryan remained standing by the torn tent. He didn't even attempt to run. And then Chris saw the monster in its entirety. It was no longer hiding in the trees. It descended silently onto the clearing. The creature moved on four massive, thin limbs like a spider's, but its torso was hideously human-like, severely elongated and emaciated. Its height exceeded 13 feet. The creature's skin looked ash-gray and translucent in the moonlight. Pulsing black veins were visible beneath it. In place of a head swayed that same eerie, eyeless, elongated skull.